that you see, they could have come out entirely differently, right? They could have been arranged differently, they could have been shaped differently. There were endless possibilities along the way as this thing was being built. But always, to me, the guiding light was to, make it look like a tree, but also make it something that people would feel comfortable looking at. And make it so that it would look good either way you looked at it. Right? The whole idea of having a front, which is, again, I don't know, maybe it's changed, but when I was learning bonsai, boy, first thing you did when you were designing a tree, where's the front? There, I guess. No, that's not the front. This is the front. That kind of approach to it, it works, it's fine, it's the standard. But there are other ways to go about it. Okay, so, put that one aside. I want to move this forward. And this is the tree I came to work on, but there's not a whole lot of work to be done on it, so that's why I talked to you for that moment. Just trying to fill up space. Okay. Oh. Yeah. Thank you. Right, so this was in the ground until when? 2 years ago. All right, so it started as a one-year seed, about this big, right? Collected.
2 years ago?
It was in the ground for like 6-7 years.
Oh.
It's been out of the ground for 2 years. All right, so it came out of the ground, goes into this big oversized container, right? And first year, pretty much let it grow, and then the next year, do some cutting on it, and let it grow, and that's what you're looking at. So this, from collection point, has been pruned twice. Both times at the start of the growing year, and then it's allowed to grow and keep everything. Why do that? Why do that? It's to, one, build strength, vitality. Right? If you're going to work a plant as bonsai, it has to be completely vigorous and healthy. Right? You're going to control the vigor, but it has to be there. It can't be an anemic plant, which is an unfortunate mistake that a lot of people make. They take a plant that's not in great shape. That's actually why they're attracted to it as bonsai. It's like, look at this plant. It's looking like it's hardly even alive. That would make a great bonsai. No, that would make a terrible bonsai. Maybe if you recover its health, then you can work it as a bonsai. But if you take a struggling plant and start taking stuff away from it and putting wire around it and such, you're almost certainly expediting its demise. It needs to be healthy. And the best way to promote health in a plant is to let it grow. This is common knowledge among bonsai people who've been in the game for a while. You have a plant that's struggling as a bonsai, take it out of that little pot, put it in the ground, or put it in a bigger pot, and just let it grow. That's the surest way to bring it back to some better level of health, right? And then you can torture it again and make it weak. So I let this grow to build health, but also to create options, right? I had this, was growing up tall and straight, and in being allowed to do that, it fed all this part, right? It helped build all this. The need for communication between the roots and the crown, facilitated by the structure the plant builds to make the connection between what's above the ground and below the ground. In a certain way of thinking, everything we know in life is a system. Plants are absolutely a system. And this part has a function, and this part you can't see has a function, and this part in between has a function, and they all operate in fairly predictable ways. So, in cutting this off, after allowing it to help build this up, I stimulate a response in the tree. I've checked it from growing the way that it wants to grow. What does it do? It activates latent buds, things that are just hanging out there, not doing anything much, but they're there as an insurance policy for just this sort of thing. Not that, a rapidly aging guy with a saw comes along and cuts it off, but in case, a big tree falls on it, in case a beaver chews it, in case, it's attacked by insects and that part of the tree dies. There are any number of ways calamity comes, and the tree has these built-in responses. The system comes with a backup, right? This is the backup, triggered into action by this calamity. Checked from doing what it wanted to do, it responds with new growth in new places. From our standpoint, what that amounts to are options. These are options. The more branches I have, the more options I have. The more latitude I have to create different looks. Well, create different looks. Why would you want to do that? You're making a bonsai, right? Just triangular shaped crown. I mean, what's the different look? The different look is the individuality of each plant. Just like in nature, just like in each of us. Look at all of us, right? What do we have? We have 2 eyes, we have 2 ears, we have 2 arms, we have 2 feet, right? We got all the same stuff, essentially, right? Some people's is in better shape than other people's, but we all have the same stuff. Yet we're all somehow completely different, right? We all have individuality. The trees do too. There's a tree, there's another tree, there's another tree, there's another tree. Yes, but each one is an individual. Each one grew in a certain way out of 2 main factors. One, genetics, right? What is the plant capable of as a member of its species? Maples grow differently than pines, for example. And then environmental factors. What happened to this tree along the way? Where was it growing? Okay, this tree had the misfortune of becoming a bonsai subject. And so, cut, 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 right? And every time, what happens? Regrow. Stop it from doing what it wants, it tries again. Stop it from doing what it wants, it tries again. And each time you make those cuts, you should, ideally, be making choices, decisions. Not eeny, meeny, miny, mo decisions, but decisions aimed towards a goal. What's your goal? Well, if you're in the phase of bonsai where you're studying the books like I did, then your goal is to make a tree that looks like the one in the books. Or the one in the magazine. Whatever your prime source of inspiration is. If you're into trees in nature, then your objective is to make a tree that looks plausible, not ordinary, right? We don't want a tree that makes people yawn. We want a tree that engages them, that makes them look twice, makes them look at from different angles. How do you do that? By building interest into every little part of it. How do you do that? By the choices you make when you prune. Okay, so you look at something like this. How do you know where to begin? This is one of the common questions. I talk to people who don't know bonsai all the time. They're my customers. They come through and they look at the trees, and I wish they would ask me all kinds of, subtle questions about art, imitating nature and such, but they don't. They say, how do you know what to cut off? Well, it's actually a pretty good question. How do you know what to cut off? Well, for me now, that question is answered by the frame of reference I carry in my head. How do trees grow? Here's an example. I have a branch that came out. I stopped it. It responded with 2 new points of growth. Do I want to keep them both? Do I want to take one off and keep the other? Do I want to remove them both and hope for something better on the next try? In my mind, I don't think I'll get better than that out of that branch. That's what it's capable of doing. I'm going to go with it, and I'm going to remove this one. Why that one? Well, because it makes more sense to me that the tree would do that, right? If something happened to check it in its growth, it would respond more by going up. Well, wait a minute. This one responded by going both ways. This is a young tree, right? That's not my objective, to make a young tree. I want this to look like an old tree. How old is this tree? This tree is about 20 years old. It's not old for a tree, That's hardly even getting started for a tree. They're capable of living hundreds, sometimes even thousands of years. I want to grow up, so that's what I'm going to do with that one. But I don't want all that. I'm going to cut it there. What is my expected response on the tree's part? These two buds right here, which were kind of hanging down there, probably would have produced leaves anyway, but now they're almost certainly going to, because what had been the terminal bud has been removed, and several others behind it removed. That makes this one next in line. That means all the energy that flows out this way is going to be primarily expressed through these two buds. Is this 100% guarantee? No, it's not. Not any more than anything else in life is 100% guarantee. But that's a reasonably good bet. So when I start out and I'm looking at things and thinking what to cut, I always want to approach it kind of slowly and cut things that I think are really not legitimate options to begin with. Why do it that way? Because there's some kind of momentum or rhythm that you build up by doing that I build up. That's what I find anyway. I'm making cuts that I feel very confident about. Like, I'm not going to need that, so I'm going to take it off. And in the action of just moving around the tree, identifying things that I think are less useful and removing them, you start to get comfortable with what you're doing. You start to think of it, or I shouldn't say that. You don't think. You stop thinking. I think it's better like that, if you can. Well, that's bad advice, isn't it? Stop thinking. Did you ever get in trouble without thinking first? I never have. Every time I've gotten in trouble, it's because I thought something, but I thought the wrong thing. So if you don't think your chances of being wrong go down.